Hello there, traveler. Sometimes when you're about to set forward on the path in front of you, it's important to take a moment, compile yourself, and take that breath in. Observe around you and see the sights that are in front of you. What is the space that makes your moment? Where is the path currently leading you to? Once we take that moment and that opportunity, we begin to set forward with intention on whatever that next objective is. Putting forth our mindfulness and effort into it as we bring ourselves to the next spot. Maybe we're sitting in a lily pad or enjoying a spot underneath the moon's glaze. Take a moment, take that breath back in, and go. We go down farther that path, through the woods, over the mountain, through the trees, down the cave, up the pathway, wherever it might lead us, into the place where eventually we stop, and we have to look back in again. Repeating this process, taking a moment to gather ourselves, centering back down, grounding. Noticing the environment around us isn't always the most pleasant. Sometimes we're stuck out in the rain, or we're lost in the thick bamboo patchwork maze. We trudge, we work, we get through, we find the clearings, we find the open path. Might be a little phrased, might be a little flat-footed, but we take that moment again and come back to the breath. We use it to forge our way down that path, using the hearth that we create along the way, and celebrate. Dance around in the leaves, yell and scream at the neighbors. Make sure that everyone hears us as we merry our way around. It's not always an easy thing to do, to take a moment to actually appreciate a journey. But we come back to it again and again, and we find our breath, and we find where our place in it is. Sometimes when we're in these different places of being, we have to ask ourselves some pretty tough questions. But now that we return from our respite from the equinox and take notion of what our intentions were into this next chapter, the first question that we ask ourselves this week is, would you rather someone be honest and hurt your feelings, or lie to protect them? I think that I was for so long someone who really always thought I was always doing my best to be honest. And to not only be honest, but be direct and really be intuitive with it, honestly. Be able to ascertain it with a certain level of mindfulness to being part of my core identity at times in my life. I think back to my early recovery, and specifically how rigorous honesty was such a foundational part of, working my steps, and that it became a major part of my identity, and I would honestly try to be brutally honest with things. And because I allowed that to become such a big part of what I was going through, and I was always being, at least in my best ability, honest and mindful about those things, I was really still not able to use it almost as a shield, use it as a way to protect some serious hard things. And then when I talk about that as I was still really early on my deconstruction, especially around things around my gender identity, my expression, my orientation, and who really I was. And I resorted in a lot of people-pleasing behaviors. They're just something that I've only really come to start to reckon with in my current recovery and my deconstruction, and really starting to actually address in what honestly honesty means to me now. You know, working in therapy and everything like that, and my therapist always likes to stop me and is like, what is honesty? And I say, what is truth? Everyone's is relative to something else, right? And that one always throws me through a trip, because I do like to pretend like there's this ideology. If there's just this one way of thinking, and that's just not the case oftentimes. I would think out how I would be honest to an extent, right? And then I would get into these behaviors where I would want to be conflict avoidant and just make things okay. And I would say things that were honest and true, but to only part of the picture, right? It's not, there was not necessarily direct lies, but lies by omission. Those little white lies to protect people, protect myself. And that's where it's so easy to get lost in the minutia of what is the truth and what is the creation that you create. And even when being radically honest about things, like I can think back on some of the harder moments in my life where I've had very direct, very clear, this is black and white conversations. When I was confronted about if I did meth, when I had escalated partnerships, and all those times being like, yes, these are things that I thought I was being honest and being very conversational about, to be honest with you. These are things that I believed in myself, that I was being honest about, and that I was being where the boundaries were, and or still whatever expression of that truth was. I thought I was being honest even in these direct ways and not trying to protect people's feelings. But realizing that through a series of different, of trying to, figure out my own agency and trying to figure out how to have space for myself and actually still be my own independent person. But then on top of that, by just getting into these weird conflict avoidant behaviors and everything like that, then all of a sudden these lies by omissions are little white lies when you're just constructing realities that aren't in line with everyone else. And people are very much often at the times doing the same with you. And it's figuring out how to sit there and actually be in those spaces and be like, no, this is what I mean by this. And I think that it's really a lot of effort and intention to actually be radically honest and have someone understand exactly what you mean when you get to those deconstruction of those really intimate identical walls that people have when they're in their core identity. Like, for instance, the relationships with drugs that I had with myself at that time, or the different gender expressions that I've gone through, and having to be like, hey, I don't think I'm just this normative person. And I think that there's a lot more fluidity to my identity, right? I think that ultimately this is an honest conversation with yourself that the answer, as always, is it depends. I don't think you owe your honest and self-authentic truth to a world that is hostile towards you. I think that, for instance, if you are someone who's going through trans identity and is in a country or a world that actively will eliminate your existence and deny and erase any part of your things, you don't necessarily owe them anything. And you should potentially be able to lie to protect yourself or protect, necessarily them, I don't think you should have to live in a world of that, though, right? I think you should be able to live in a world where you can be honest in your expression. I think that fundamentally our job is to further whatever social revolution it takes to get to a point where it doesn't matter whether you are someone who is going from a different non-normative expression, or you're someone who is suffering from some pretty scary internal intrusive thoughts, or you're someone who is just experiencing this diaspora treatment. You can have that honesty. You can actually live in a world that will hear you and support you. But unfortunately, that isn't the world. So then there's times where protection is necessary, right? But that's where I think it's really interesting. And this is one of the big things I actually do still believe that I took from those early days in my recovery program is have your trusted confidant, have your close circle of people where you can be rigorously honest with someone, where you can have those moments where it does take you to pull those band-aids and to have those hard conversations, to have those moments where time slows down and you take all of your time and effort to be there and then get aligned and actually understand what each individual word for each other means. There is times where you have to have those hard conversations so you can get through this life, right? Now, you have to, the thing that we're not always given, right, is the ability to have our teammates squared away from the beginning. But as we get farther and farther down this path, as we have the opportunity to really have these different teammates that come into our life and understand who fills our cup and who fills their cup, and making sure there's mutual reciprocal exchanges, that this is someone that is there for your help and everything like that. Those are the people you take that honest approach to. Those are the things that people you do have those intimate exchanges with. So I wish it was as simple as saying, yes, I think we should always train for right speech, right? I do believe there is always something as different Buddhist doctrine will talk about, like the right mindful thing, right mindful approach to things. And I don't think you should lie for any maleficent different reason, and I don't think you should make yourself a martyr by any means. And if your rigorous honesty inflicts more suffering. But in order to accept reality, to be able to move forward, and to actually challenge those things, we do need to come to these spaces on the journey. We need to come to these spaces where we can dance around with our fools, our other coven, and be a bunch of witches in the night, and be fools and miraculous, read each other, and be vicious and mock each other, and tease, and whatever we need to. Where we can have these hard spaces with these people that trust and love us, and be there. We are social creatures after all. I wish I had a lot more definitive an answer to this, because at one point in my life I really thought I did. When it comes down to it, wherever you're searching for the truth, when you're working to end suffering and to do the next right thing, I do believe you should have that radical honesty. If you're living to protect for your own existential reasons, and if you need to take one more step down the path yourself, I'm not in your place, and I can't make those decisions for you. But one thing I'm happy to remind you, and happy to let you know, is that wherever you're at on your descent, you have the opportunity to make the next right decision, whatever that might be. And you will always be enough.